can see it up close. But the bird is actually very small. And this work was done by Ashish Jha, as I mentioned to you. So I'm going to speak, many of the pictures taken in this presentation are by him. And I'm almost speaking on behalf of him. So just to give you a perspective of the size of this bird, all of you might be identifying several species found here, the birds. And relative to these birds, obviously some of them like this bird and maybe this bird, they are slightly undersized in this image, but this is the bird that we are talking about. Roughly one fifth of a chicken, a very small bird. So you will not notice it unless you observe it carefully. A small bird, colorful bird, and it is found almost everywhere in our country. Bulbuls. And bulbuls are about 24, 25 species in the country, and many of them are found only in India. One such species is the yellow-throated bulbul. So we wanted to focus on what is found only within our Indian landmass. So we wanted to know how it came to exist, how does it survive, how does it use its habitat. So all the work was focused on this group of birds found only in India. So birds, as you can see, are very colorful. They have different shapes. But how do you watch birds? How do you identify birds? And if you watch each of these images carefully, you can see that there is always some modification from one bird to the other. And the most of the modification is in the beak and in the feet and in the feathers. So if you watch 3 parts of the bird very carefully, you can roughly identify any bird. And more careful observation will lead you to identify very closely related species. And as you can see, the beak is the only part which they use, that is the mouth, and they also use it for a variety of purposes like defense. If there is an attack by a predator, they use the beak for a defense. They use it to pick fruits, insects. They also use it to feed their young ones. They also use it to make their nests. So the beak is a multi-purpose organ in the birds and a very sensitive organ. Please don't think that beaks are like plastic pieces, very hard and not sensitive. Till the tip of the beak, there is a lot of sensory organs. They can sense everything through the beak, the texture, the thickness, the softness, or the the kind of food that they are holding on the beak. So they are very sensitive, full of blood vessels, nerves, and they can sense the environment by touch through the beak. And therefore, birds are very elusive for those who are not watching them carefully. But if you start observing, birds are everywhere, and you can observe birds very easily. And they are the best organisms to study, which are free-ranging, because they come, they sit in front of us, they do various behaviors, and they are very beautiful to watch, and they're very engaging for many of us. So that's me on a huge hillock, walking early morning, trying to locate the birds. And what do you do when you need to observe birds? You need to carry a pair of binoculars. That's what I'm carrying on my shoulder. And these binoculars magnify a certain region very large. And therefore, you can see, say, for example, from where I'm standing, we can observe birds in this tree, this tree, this tree, even closer, like here, here, and here. So, but it might be very difficult to climb up and reach there, but you can see the bird sitting on this tree using these binoculars. So we, in this area, we did find the yellow-throated bulbul along with other birds. Here you can see a few other birds. So they have very specialized habitat requirements. That is on the rock faces. So there is a small seepage of water. They are drinking water. All of them are drinking water and probably looking for insects and feeding on them. So they have very specialized areas that they use. So when you go birding, you have to walk. It's a good exercise for your legs, hands, shoulders, and eyes, and also ears. Why ears? Because you have to listen to birds. Birds make a lot of calls, and each bird has a distinctive call, right? And so it's very easy to identify birds if you listen to them carefully. And like a yellow-throated bulbul also has a very distinctive call, which when you walk through such rocky areas in the Deccan plateau, you can hear them sometimes, but not able to see them. But if you spend long enough, you will see them. So you'll be very lucky if you see a yellow-throated bulbul in its habitat. So I just mentioned to you that bulbuls, all birds can be identified by their body features like beak, tail, wing, legs. So within bulbuls, you can separate them based on basically two major body measurements. One is tail length and the other is wing length. Now, if we use these two measurements, and you can see where yellow-throated bulbul sits, and if you see the tail length, which varies from all other bulbuls, there are 8 bulbuls in this space, and it means the tail. They say, they jokingly say that children are naughty who have a long tail, huh? So because they keep jumping, and the tail in birds also are used to navigate through, avoid small barriers and swiftly move through branches and all that. So they're very useful for birds to negotiate, the vegetation. And obviously, this bird is living in well-wooded areas within those barren landscapes. And wing length, obviously wing length, here in this black bulbul, you find the wing length maximum. That is because it can fly long distances continuously. And that is not possible with the yellow-throated bulbul. So this already gives us some idea about where our bulbul might be. And if you see a species like the red whiskered bulbul or the red vented bulbul, which is very common in Hyderabad, in and around of Hyderabad, these two species are also having moderate wing length and moderate tail length. So our species of interest, which is the YTB here, has a distinctively long tail, and that is certainly helping them use a specific habitat in the ecosystem. So what is most important when you study birds is observation. Observation is the key to understanding any organism. So as I told you, to observe birds, you need binoculars. You can also carry a camera. So these are all pictures taken using a camera. So here you can find the yellow-throated bulbul feeding on a cucurbitaceae or a fruit of a climber here, and it is when it is caught, it usually defecates, and you can see the seeds of various fruits here, and it is here picking on a fruit of a tree, and here it is picking a flying insect. It's probably a winged termite, and it is catching it and trying to eat it. So all these observations are possible only if we use a binocular and a camera. So these are essential to study birds. And then additionally, you need a few more things, which I will show you in the next few slides. So some very careful observations will also lead to identifying where their nests are. See, birds are very fussy animals. They won't, or any animal is like that, because they won't lead you to their nests. They won't put their nests in obvious places. Because they have their young ones there. They will protect it. They will hide it from sight, and they will not put it in very obvious places. So this is a yellow-throated bulbul nest, and you can imagine how it must have picked all these small twigs and arranged them in this manner to make a nest on a branch. And here the parents are feeding the young one. As you can see, male, female, the nest is nearby. So they are picking some insects and going and feeding the young one. So they are very busy during that time after hatching. They have to go and keep on feeding the young one till they grow into something like this. This is a young one, a fledgling, we call it a fledgling. And you can see how drab colored it is, and it is having very less feathers on the head. And it has just emerged out of the nest. It is exploring the world, and now it will become an independent bird very soon. Sometimes you will also find nests in very awkward places. It is the wish of the bird to make the nest wherever it pleases, and it has made a nest in this box which is having a cover. Maybe this is a good cover to avoid cats to enter inside, and they have made a nest just under the light here. It found this place as to be very secure, and this yellow-throated bulbul has put its eggs here, and she's incubating the eggs. They have to sit on the eggs to incubate them. Incubation is required to make the eggs warm, and therefore the embryo will develop, and then it will hatch after a certain period of time. So what did we do? So these observations are all put in these black dots. The region of interest is this, maybe 1/4 or 1/3 of India here. And you have all observations which are in black dots here. And you recognize the outline of India in this map. And what we did was used these features, which are all collected through satellite images. When we send satellites, they have very powerful cameras, and these cameras keep taking pictures. As the Earth moves, the satellite has an orbit and it is moving. So when it passes through a certain area of the Earth, it starts taking pictures. And these pictures are all stitched and made into a satellite map, a satellite imaging. And then it can also pick, details like the slope, the complexity of the terrain, the amount of rainfall that is received, the temperature variation in that area, the amount of greenness in that area. All this is picked up by the satellite images. Now, when we use these observations of ours and observations of other people, and we are able to also generate a map where all this bird can exist. Now, this green shaded area is all the area where they can exist. Now, if you notice, there are three places where there are no observations, but still there is some prediction that there could be the presence of this bird. So, does it really occur there? We don't know. But during the study, when we predicted the occurrence in the south, Soon after our prediction, somebody actually saw the bird. So these are very powerful methods. Today we have the ability to sense the environment through these satellite images, and we can generate these ways to predict distribution of animals. So this was a new record that was added after we made this particular map. So it validated, it kind of provided this distribution map is pretty good representation of how the species is found in this area. Now, if you notice, it is not continuous. There are so many breaks. There are concentrated patches like here. But then there are so many white parts in between that are devoid of this bird. But you can see some observations made even in those areas, right? Very few of them, but still you can see a few areas where the white part is dominant. So that becomes very important to know what is happening to these patches. Are they doing fine in these areas? What is the condition of this particular bird? Now, if you notice carefully in my first slide on the right-hand side top corner, I put one red circle. I can go back so that, yeah, so here, here you can see on the right-hand side top corner, vulnerable red list. And this is a symbol for the IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Species, where they prioritize globally, all over the world, whether species are doing well or not. Now it says that it is vulnerable. So it is a red listed species. That means it is having some problems in its areas, which we have to try and find out and help the species survive. So if we overlay the same map of the distribution of yellow-throated bulbul over protected areas, so the dark line outline that you see are all our protected areas. So all of you probably know what is a protected area. So these are areas which are inviolate. They are kept out of bounds of human activities. Everywhere else, you can do whatever you want. You can grow crops, you can make roads, you can build a factory, you can build schools, you can go and make playgrounds, you can build airports, you can build anything. But inside these small areas, you cannot do all these things. They are meant for these animals to survive, right? So you may think, oh, how much of that area it is? Do we have enough area to do what we want? In India, we have less than 5% of area which is under protected area. So 95% of land, we can do anything we want. So these animals, there are areas where this yellow-throated bulbul is found, and it also overlaps with protected areas. But some areas don't. Now, are protected areas sufficient for a species like the yellow-throated bulbul? Protected areas are meant to preserve large mammals, and over time, these protected areas have also become isolated, and there is no connectivity between them. There are some forest areas in between, but they are losing forest cover because of various activities which are allowed outside PS. So we are facing some problems. So it turns out that only about 13% of all the yellow-throated bulbul distribution falls in protected areas in this region, which is not a very high number, right? Less, I mean, nobody wants to get 13% marks, no? So you want to get, in fact, 87%, not 13%. So everybody would like to have more and more percentage. So yellow-throated bulbul, unfortunately, does not get the benefit of protected areas in this area. Now, what is actually happening here if they are all present in small isolated pockets, what is, how are they surviving? Now, we refer to these isolated populations as metapopulations because they interact. Now, how do populations interact? You know how people interact. How do we interact? We speak to each other, right? We speak, we meet, we exchange things between us. Like if we have a lunchbox, we open it and we share the food with others. So that is how we interact. But animal populations would interact by mating with individuals of the other population. And that is the kind of interactions that populations have. Now, in this diagram, I've explained how observations in an area like, say, the Deccan, which is given in this geometric space that I have given as the boundary in black, and then you have a shaded area within it, which signifies the distribution of the species, right? It is not found everywhere. It is found in some areas in patches. Within them are the habitats, and within them are the observations. Now, some of the observations are also outside, which I also mentioned in my previous slides. So now, to identify how they interact, we need to study these birds very carefully. And that involves going out in the field, setting up what is called as a mist net. You know what is a mist, you know? In the month of December, January, we get this early morning white colored, condition outside in the outdoors, and you can't see much distance. So this net is almost like a mist. The birds cannot see it. So they fly and they get caught and they don't die. People like Ashish, me, we are sitting somewhere, hiding ourselves a little away from where we have put the net. And then we go and quickly, after we see a bird getting caught, we go and pick it, and we are removing the bird here, and then we put a ring on it. This is not to hurt the bird. This is how you hold the bird without injuring it or causing any harm to it. And then see how he's holding between the first index finger and the middle finger, and the rest of the body is covered by the fingers, and the legs are hanging freely. So you should not hold the bird by the leg. He's also holding the neck and the body here. The legs are also held tight, and then the ring is fixed. Then we also, if it defecates in the pouch bag which we put it in, then we collect the food material and try to identify what it has eaten. And then we weigh, measure, like the beak length is being measured here. So, and then after putting the tag, the bird is released. Now this becomes a permanent ID. Like if you zoom into this picture, there will be a number on this. So it is wearing like a bangle or a watch and flying and living in the forest. It is not going to affect the bird because it is a very small weight on the bird, but it becomes a very useful way of studying the bird. And when we do this, we also collect a drop of blood from the wings. It's not even a drop, a small capillary tube is put on the brachial wing, and then whatever blood gets into it in microliters is picked up, and then we use it for our genetic work because DNA is found in that small sample. Even a feather would be sufficient. So if we get a feather or a blood. And in the process, we can also see nests of these birds. So, look at the effort. We had about 130 sessions, and we caught about 260 birds, and only 63 of them were yellow-throated bull. So remember this, why I put these numbers is to tell you how easy it is to capture birds. So you must remember that birds are freely flying, But if people want to hunt them, they can easily capture birds by putting these nets. So many birds are captured and even traded for pets, for eating. So that is very wrong. We didn't kill any bird in this process. All the 260 birds were released into the wild. And look at the number of species. 29 species were caught in these mist nets. So you can study variety of birds by doing these mist netting studies. And all these areas in South India were covered, combed, and the mist nets were laid to go and we use those samples to go and analyze them. So I want you to focus on the habitats on the right panel. I have put some habitats where the yellow-throated bulbul occurs. This is a beautiful place in Ramnagara in Karnataka, and here the same, very close to it. So you find such rock faces in Telangana also. So the bird is found in these sort of vegetation which are interspersed with the rocks. It is not found in these areas, very rarely. It moves through these areas. Now, I have put a bar here which suggests 10 kilometers distance on this map. And this also shows the mountains or the small hillocks and the plains. The green color is the plains and the white color is the mountains. So obviously they are occurring in these small hillocks and they move. Now, if you place these same 10-kilometer bars on these red dots, imagine a small bird moving 10 kilometers on the plains, and reaching another site, and then interacting with the birds there, mating with them, surviving there, and then young ones also moving from one side to another. So this area becomes very important for them to move through and reach another nearby area. So therefore, the use of this bird of not just these hillocks, even the plains, becomes an important feature. And it becomes even more important when we look at the impacts that we are causing. Here you see sand mining, soil mining. So this is very good topsoil which is mined out for making bricks. And you can see rocks mined out and they are used for quarries, making construction aggregate, that is jelly or what you use to make roads and even concrete structures. So you also have intense lopping and grazing by goats in these areas. The shepherds graze their goats, and when they go, they can't climb up these trees. They go and cut the branches of these trees so that the leaves fall down and the goats can feed on them. So all these have negative impacts on yellow-throated bulbul. So when we see that the cities have to build houses and where is the material coming from? Material is coming from these rock quarries, which are habitats of species like the yellow-throated bulbul. So I received many excellent questions, and I should congratulate both the teachers and the students for asking these questions. I'm going to go through each one of them and try to answer them, and then we can open the session for more questions. So the first question is, so we know of many places which are like this, or which are like this, or which are like this. So we can do something about it. And in our own state, we have to protect these isolated rock hillocks, rocky hillocks. And they have very important species, not just yellow-throated bulbul. You have reptiles, you have other birds, you have insects, you have very important plants, which are medicinal plants, which survive in those hillocks. Why some species are endemic or restricted only to certain areas while some are present everywhere? Very good question. See, those which are endemic or found in restricted areas are showing some specialization. And as I told you in my slide where I showed the different bulbuls, the one that is very different, like the yellow-throated bulbul or the black bulbul, which is having a larger wing length and a shorter tail length. Yellow-throated bulbul had a long tail length and a short wing length. So they are showing specialization. So endemics are those which specialize. So what do you mean by specialization? That they have acquired some traits in their body which makes them best surviving in that area. If they can survive in that area very well, they become endemic, right? They don't need to occupy area everywhere. That is how endemism starts to evolve in an area. Can we identify global warming effect on local ecosystem in a short, medium-term duration? Yes, in fact, our work looked at the impact of global warming on yellow-throated bulbul. And we predict that some areas are going to be newly available for the species because there is going to be drying up of wet forests, and therefore the species will move up in the mountains in the Western Ghats. But it will lose areas in other places. The overall effect is loss. So somewhere it is positive, somewhere it is negative, but overall it is global warming is going to impact yellow-throated bulbul in a negative way because we are going to have unpredictable rainfall, many rainy days or very high precipitation in very few days. So all this is going to have negative impact on the species. So to answer the question, yes, we can do it with given the technologies and the data that we have today. Can we consider microorganisms as part of ecosystem? Why not? They are part of the ecosystem. In fact, we cannot live without microorganisms as humans. They perform very important functions in our body, like our microorganisms in our gut. If they don't exist, we don't exist. So therefore, microorganisms are part of the ecosystem and they serve very important function. What is the smallest and the largest ecosystem? Now, the smallest ecosystem can be even a rock pool. A small rock pool can be an ecosystem. The entire ice shelf in the Antarctic can be another ecosystem. So the ecosystem can vary in size, but they all mean that they have similar characteristics and similar species that require that ecosystem to survive in that place. So you can imagine what the smallest and the largest ecosystem could be. A small puddle of water in a rock can be the smallest ecosystem that you can think of. Large one can be as large as the ice sheets in Antarctica. What is the importance of having a flagship species? How can we use them to conserve ecosystems? See, flagship species are like, our heroes, heroes who promote different things. So you have Chiranjeevi, he's a flagship person, a hero. So when he says something, everybody listens. So flagship species have a certain attribute that will make people understand the significance of the ecosystem, right? So when flagship species is highlighted, that means you are talking about the ecosystem. So it makes people stand up and listen. What is happening to my flagship species? Why is that a flagship species getting affected? What should I not do or do in the ecosystem so that it survives? So that is the role of the flagship species and its importance. What is the role of biodiversity in balancing ecosystems? Now, the word balancing is slightly difficult because there is no balance actually. Ecosystem is always in a dynamic equilibrium. It is not, it's not like a, balance which you hold to weigh. You put 1 kilo weight here and 1 kilo tomato or potato, and then you weigh it and it balances. No. Ecosystems are having many components and they offer many services. So the balance or the notion of balance comes by the dynamic equilibrium. So there are things getting in, there are things going out, and there are abiotic factors like light, water, heat, all that going through, and the organisms utilize these abiotic factors and make the ecosystem function. So it is very dynamic, and the dynamic equilibrium is what we perceive as balance. So what happens when an ecosystem functions? It starts giving us services. Now, if you have a hillock, you will always find the farms that are adjoining the hillock having better water. There is almost the last farmland to dry will be very close to that hillock, because some water will seep through that hillock. The hillocks capture water, right? So we derive ecosystem services because we preserve these ecosystems. So that is where we need to understand how ecosystems should be conserved. How can we involve local native people in the conservation of ecosystems? We cannot conserve any ecosystem without involving local people. Okay, so in India, we have many examples of how people have lived with the ecosystems and they have survived over thousands of years. And some of our activity more recently has changed, and therefore we have to look back at our old practices and our old values and why those ecosystems were important for us. Therefore, we cannot conserve our ecosystems well if we do not involve the locals or the native people. They become almost integral for any conservation program focusing on ecosystems. What are the uses of national parks? It is the same as what we talk about ecosystems. National parks are nothing but conserving large landscapes. Large landscapes include several ecosystems. So it is like, your one ecosystem is giving you water, another ecosystem is giving you nutrients, another ecosystem is giving you food. So in a national park, you are preserving all four. So it is giving you enormous service. So more than what one ecosystem alone provides. How do we identify if there is any disease affecting wild animals, and how do we prevent or treat it in the wild? See, during the pandemic that is happening now, COVID-19, it has been so difficult to even stop people getting infected and dying out of the infection. Because, as human beings, we are very social. We help each other. We can speak, we use technology like phone, apps, everything. And still, so many lakhs of people have died. Wild animals have nothing. They will, if they get infected, they will just slowly move away, go to some place very isolated and die. And nobody will know it that an animal has died because of a disease. For us to know that an animal has died because of a disease, it might take several years of many animals dying and repeated deaths. Therefore, monitoring is very important. That is how you prevent diseases. Treating wild animals for diseases is almost impossible. We cannot vaccinate wild animals like we can vaccinate ourselves. To capture wild animals is very difficult. We have to use darts, or we have to hold them in cages. They get very upset. They sometimes die out of that stress. So we can prevent diseases by monitoring and stepping in early and not wasting time before it becomes very serious, right? What is so unique about our Deccan ecosystem that needs to be conserved? See, Deccan ecosystem is one ecosystem in which majority of our extinctions have happened in the recent years. Please remember that very well. No other place has seen many extinctions as much as what Deccan ecosystem has seen. That means we have transformed this area to an extent that all these species can become locally extinct. Okay, we have lost Indian cheetah, which was probably roaming in these areas abundantly. We have lost Jordan's courser, which was again quite abundant in these areas, no more to be found. We have lost a great Indian bustard in many areas, and they are found in very small pockets now. Maybe 3-4 animals, birds come and nest. Lesser florican, they are almost gone. Indian wolf, again very rare to find. Okay, so there are many examples where wild animals have had a very tough time in this area. And to bring back these species, an example is YTB, right? If we can bring back, we are actually restoring our ecosystem services, and we are going to make ourselves more resilient. In the wake of climate change, we have to become very resilient. And therefore, our Deccan ecosystems need to be conserved, right? We need to focus on why we have lost out and how we should rectify it. What are the measures taken by government to reduce mining in that area and to protect the ecosystem? See, I told you about protected areas, right? Protected areas are inviolate areas. So government is taking measures to prevent degradation of protected areas. They put a lot of effort. There are guards who wear uniform, they carry guns, they walk around, they perambulate, they catch people who go and set fire, cut trees. They don't allow any activity. But outside, it's very difficult, right? So anybody can go and start doing cultivation, cutting trees, and mining a certain area, their own land. They want to make bricks. They will take the soil and do the bricks. So we cannot stop all these activities. But some areas which are reserved forests, which are forest, still good quality forests, but some activities are there like grazing. We can involve the locals to protect that area, make people, all these students, I see some 200 and 400 people in this. If all of you start watching birds and start saying, I want to see birds, I want to go and observe them, and we can have, areas where yellow-throated bulbul is seen to be visited by people like you, and therefore some local revenue will be obtained and that habitat will remain intact. So we must explore these options, and the government can encourage these measures to involve locals in making these ecosystems important by showcasing what is found there. Some examples of endangered birds, animals in our state, I have already amply explained in my previous answer for a question why Deccan ecosystem is important. We had, our state had a great Indian bustard. Okay, what the place you see today as the Rajiv Gandhi International Airport, that area had bustards, and there were bustards seen along the road to Adilabad. Now we don't see them, right? So what happened? Where did they go? So we have had some impacts in these areas which made them leave these areas. So we can, there are many examples of this sort where we can work to improve the habitat conditions for these animals to survive in our state. And we can go and observe and enjoy watching them. Yeah, I think I've finished all the questions. If there are more, Dr. Pavni, I'll hand over it to you. You can steer the discussion.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for patiently answering all the questions. Actually, we have received more questions from the students. I've received more than 200 responses for the Google form shared, but I've compiled and consolidated all of them, some repetitive questions and all that, so that I've picked only a selected questions. And then few of the questions have posted, students have posted in the chat box, sir. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, please. I'm also seeing the chat box. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I've listed down a couple of them. So the first question is that what are the favorable factors in Deccan ecosystem that yellow throat bulbul is surviving there? What are the favorable factors for the yellow throated bulbul in this ecosystem?
Very good question. See, the favorable factors are hillocks. Okay, large hillocks, and the vegetation that these hillocks have. Now, hillocks also capture moisture, and because of the moisture along the, the cracks and the valleys, there is good vegetation, and it's usually colonized by trees which can grow in very less soil, and like ficus. Ficus is Murray. Murray is what they call it in Telugu, I think. So Murray is very nutritious fruit. It has the highest calcium, potassium compared to any other fruit. So we also eat ficus, no? So the anjeer they call. So these are the features that make it very important for the bird to survive. See, if the bird can't eat well, get enough food for it, it won't reproduce. So if it doesn't reproduce, the population won't go. So that makes it important for the species to survive in these areas.
Okay. So moving on to next question, they're asking, can we create, if we create artificial ecosystem for the birds or animals, can they adapt and survive in those artificial ecosystems like we are doing for coral reefs and all?
Yeah. See, that's a very good question. See, we have quarried mines, areas that have been already excavated, and they are basically inverted mountains. It's going down like that, and there is some water below, and usually such places are very dangerous because you can fall inside and there can be accidents and all that. So I think we can restore such ecosystems, right? We should restore them, and we should make them, we should plant some ficus on the slopes, steep slopes, and vegetate it by putting some soil and planting these trees, and restore these habitats to make them better for birds to come. I'm sure birds will come. I'm not sure whether YTB will come, but surely birds will come, and they can be very good birding sites. So we can go take children and show birds instead of telling them don't go to that site, it's dangerous. We can make it more attractive. I think we are not creating a complete ecosystem, but at least partial ecosystems, which are encouraging animals to come.
Yes, sir, definitely. Maybe the locals should take such initiative and take it forward. So the one more question was, what is the effect of biomagnification and what is its effect on ecosystem? Do we see that in the Deccan ecosystem? Bioaccumulation and biomagnification.
Yeah, see, this happens usually when there are animals at the highest trophic level, right? So biomagnification happens along the trophic levels. What is a trophic level? There are producers, and then there are primary consumers. Then there are secondary consumers, tertiary consumers. So each layer is a trophic level. And the bioaccumulation starts from primary producers, to primary consumers, to secondary consumers, and then to tertiary consumers. So at every stage, a certain amount of toxins, poisons, in fact, get amplified when we consume the different trophic level animals. So I am not sure of any example off my head for the state, but I can highlight one example of a trophic interaction leading to problems for animals. I'm sure you've heard of Bijur. Bijur has a big rocky area and it is famous for vultures. And vultures are dying because they are consuming cattle which are having diclofenac. Diclofenac is a compound which is a painkiller, right? We also take diclofenac if we have body pain, but they are giving it to cows. That is very important to know. Many of us don't pay attention how much of diclofenac is used in dairying industry. And when these cows die, they are thrown, their carcass is left out and the vultures come and feed on them. And for vultures, diclofenac is like poison. So they suffer something like gout. You know, gout is a disease where your joints swell up and you can't move, right? Elderly people get gout, and it is because of accumulation of oxalates or crystals in the joints, and the bones, the limbs become stiff and painful, very painful, and then the vultures die. So their liver also gets affected in the process. So this is a very important impact that is happening in our vulture population because of use of diclofenac. And diclofenac has been banned by the Animal Husbandry Department. There are alternatives provided like meloxicam. So meloxicam is supposedly a replacement of diclofenac. So farmers should not use diclofenac if they want to help vultures.
Thank you, sir, for explaining that problem as well. And now I have another question. It's not about the Deccan ecosystem. It's about the study of wildlife or wildlife biology status in India. One of the students or teachers have asked, why don't we see many wildlife biologists in India? What is the scope for this environmental studies in higher education? What are the opportunities a student can explore in this field?
See, I think any biology student can become a wildlife biologist. Yes, certain amount of training is required, but you can acquire that training. If you go and work with suitable mentors, you can learn these things. And, you know, education today is very different from what it was some years ago. It is, you know, the onus is on the student now. Earlier, the onus was on the institutions to grab the students. Now the onus is on the students because the choice is many. And the students have to make the choice. And they have to know where the prospects are and where their heart lies, what they want to do. So if they feel very strongly that they should work in this area, there are many institutions, there are many good organizations that can mentor them, support them, and also make them grow. And they can contribute in very productive way.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully, at least one of the students from these lectures.
Why not one? Many.
Yeah.
Many.
No,
Yeah.
because most of them from South India, we are driving them to medicine. But I think at least few of them should take up biology and pursue it.
There are
as a
many
career.
doctors. We have lots of people to take care of humans.
Yes.
We need more people to take care of our ecosystems, our animals, birds, ants, insects, everything, plants. We are not giving enough attention to them, and therefore we are suffering today. Many of our ailments are because of the way we have treated the environment.
Yes, sir. Yes. Hopefully, the students understand and realize, what is the scope for them and explore science as a career, sir. Actually, that's one of the main objectives of this Milo CCMB project, to spark the child's interest in science, and by making them understand the kind of work that goes on at CCMB. So, yeah, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. That was a lovely session. We learned a lot, and especially this session was particularly interesting because this is not what they look in their textbooks. This is not from their text. Last two sessions was on DNA and genetics, which they have some idea from their curriculum, but this was entirely different and new for them. I think the students and teachers must have enjoyed the session, sir. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Pavni, there is one interesting question Shravani has asked. Sir, why we don't have to kill endangered animals, but we can kill other like hen and goat? Huh?
Yeah.
So it's a good question. See, the thing is, first is we farm these animals. Like hen, goat. We raise them. We reproduce them. We take care of them. If you leave them for a day, also they will suffer. But wild animals are fending for themselves throughout their life. They don't take our help, right? They feed on what is available and then they reproduce. So their reproduction is very difficult. It's very challenging. If they are able to reproduce, that means you are having good ecosystem. If you don't feed your chicken or goat properly, it won't produce eggs, or your goat won't produce young ones, right? So we invest in these animals so much that we take care of them, and therefore we are claiming that we can take their lives to feed on them. We are not putting anything for the wild animals. We have no claim over them. We have no right to kill them, right? We are not doing anything to, in fact, we are harming them. So we should do more to help them, right?
Wonderful points are there. We have no right on the wildlife's animals. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. I hope we have come to a conclusion. We have answered all the questions, sir.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you, students and teachers, for joining the session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pavni, and also thank you all students. I can see some faces, I can see some legs, I can see some smiles, but wonderful. Wish you all the very best, and do well and keep engaging with nature and looking at observing. That is the key to becoming a good wildlife biologist. So keep your eyes, ears open. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next interaction.